So welcome everyone again this evening. We're getting closer to Christmas. It's our last class before Christmas. So I'm going to try and I'll try and finish at 8:30. We might go over 5-10 minutes just to kind of get everything finished, you know, all the points covered for the class. Of course, we will have a practice day on January 5, so there'll be a chance to ask some questions there and maybe, you know, go over a little bit more detailed purification. But certainly at the end of the class, I'm going to touch on the importance, why we need to purify, a little bit how we purify. And then in the practice day, we'll go in a little bit more deeper into that, actually doing the Vajrasattva purification practice. So that's in that sort of towards the end of the class, but there's still a few more nuts and bolts about karma we need to finish. And of course, most of it anyway is in the readings. You know, the readings you've got, required readings and student readings that you got, and also this Lamrim 365-day Lamrim book is excellent. Just as generally covering all the points that mostly we've covered in this class, you know. So those two things are just those alone. And of course, if you want to do extra reading like Liberation in the Palm or some other things on the list, please, you know, it'll just deepen your understanding. But just as a minimum, those two work really, really well. So we're going to start just, again, as usual, just for about 10 minutes of meditation. A little bit shorter tonight, just so we've got time to cover the rest of the material in the topic. So let's just take a couple of minutes to find your center for meditation. Your place on the cushion, your place in the upper body. The upper body needs to kind of settle on top of the lower body, settle on the hips. So hips are sort of grounded, anchored on the cushion or the chair. And supporting the upper body so the spine's upright. Head, crown pointing towards the sky. Again, just let's do either the 9-round breathing, or you can do the just sitting and just being aware of the breath for a couple of minutes, you know, whatever you's more comfortable to kind of open and clarify and the mind for the class. So I'm going to do the 9-round, but do whatever you feel works better for you. And whatever we're doing, we just try to bring in the breath to soften and relax, you know, all the different parts of the body as well, using this inhalation, exhalation as a way to just scan the whole body and soften and relax any tension that we built up during the day. And in this space, I'm just going to guide a few minutes of motivation. Whether we are deeply aware or not, intention, karma, intention, it's one of the main meanings of karma is intention, or our sense of will, how we motivate, how we feel and think, is what is guiding our actions of body, speech, and mind. And this whole process of creating, accumulating karma is what's creating the appearance, mostly of our present life's experience. And more specifically, What we're creating now is going to be the appearance of our future lives. In a sense, day by day, moment to moment, what we're doing is creating implants. We're implanting our mind, our consciousness with karmic seeds. And that sets the stage of our future lives, as well as kind of how that future life plays out. As we study and explore the Dharma more, what unfolds is the reality that the product of our lives now and what will occur in the future, down to even momentary experiences, is our own creation, our own responsibility. The deeper our intuitive understanding or realization of karma, we can't really, when it boils down to it, blame anyone or anything for our problems. That becomes very clear. On the opposite side of the coin, though, we can also start to feel a sense of happiness, rejoicing about what we've created so far, where we've landed so far in this life. As I mentioned in a previous module, it's like we gifted ourselves this precious human life. We created it through karma, albeit not perfect. But what it does offer us is this incredible freedom to study and practice the Dharma, become a true inner being on our spiritual path. It gives us that freedom and ability to create our future life's happiness. So again, with this freedom, we try to take hold of our mind, so to speak, and continue to train and mold our hearts and mind into the causes of happiness, which can be all the way up to enlightenment, because we have Buddha nature, this potential. In a sense as well, once we study and understand the Dharma more, that becomes almost like our personal responsibility and universal responsibility to all sentient beings. So for all beings, whether they realize it or not, who are in a sense held hostage right now by the two main causes of suffering that the Buddha taught, karma and delusions. For the most part, blindly suffering, not clear of the way out. But, you know, us with this good fortune, I've met the teachings, I've met the Dharma, I've started to get some curiosity, at least some level of conviction in the teachings on karma, the teachings on the truths, the Four Noble Truths, suffering and the causes of suffering. So it's up to us to take a sense of responsibility with that knowledge to develop our heart and mind in the causes of happiness up to enlightenment. That's what the conclusion, the more we study the Lam Rim, that's the conclusion we start to come to, taking this sense of responsibility for our own happiness and eventually for that of others. This is the bodhicitta motivation. And we do that by taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha, the Buddha, the teachings and the spiritual community, and making, again, every time we say this prayer, it's making this commitment, planting this seed to continually take care of our karma, continually develop our mind and heart, and the causes us happiness up to enlightenment. Or at least we try, you know, we try to do that. Try to develop that motivation every time we recite the refuge prayer. Every time we do any spiritual practice, we try to develop this sense of personal responsibility and universal responsibility. It's kind of the meaning, one level of meaning of the refuge prayer. So we're going to recite together, just imagining Shakyamuni Buddha, really pleased. Again, Shakyamuni Buddha is an omniscient mind. So it's a lot to wrap our mind around that concept. But that means all-knowing. Can see the hearts and minds, the level of karma and capacity of all living beings. That's a quality enlightened consciousness. So just being here, thinking about the teachings, reflecting and meditating, there's no question that Buddha Shakyamuni just appears, As I said before, for enlightened beings, holy beings whose minds are more pure, they can see Buddhas everywhere, Buddhas around us all the time, guiding us, helping us. So there's no question that the Buddha's guiding and helping us right now, especially when we set our mind in the right directions of listening to the teachings, thinking about karma, trying to bring that understanding into our hearts and minds. So no question the Buddha's there to help us, to guide us, to bring a blessing into our heart, to awaken that knowledge, that feeling, that conviction more deeply for us. And of course, we're dedicating for all sentient beings. So just feeling the presence of the Buddha, either on our crown or in the space before us, as we see in the image. This translucent body with a golden hue. I guess the gold also, it's the most expensive. It's not stone, but metal, So like that, it's showing the power of the Buddha's realization. It's powerful, it's rich, that golden body. Because all the richness and wealth of spiritual realization. So for ourselves and all beings, we're going to recite the refuge prayer once in Tibetan, twice in English, and then just chant a few mantras. Again, just feeling we're receiving the blessing through light and nectar of Shakyamuni Buddha entering through our crown, blessing our body, speech and mind. Sangye chodan sogi chognamla janchu bardu dagni kyab suchi dagi chinso gebe sonamgi droba penjir sangye drupar shok. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Ayada minne minne maha munaye soha. Tayada 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 minne minne maha munaye soha. Okay, welcome again to the class for those who join maybe a couple of minutes later. So again, this is our last class of, not last, but last about karma, but we still have the practice day to come. So there's more to come, but for now, we're just going to try, as I say, I'll try and cover everything by 7:30. It might take about an extra 10 minutes tonight just to get everything that I want to try and cover for this class. So just to go over again, last week, we went over the 10 non-virtues and the 4 components of karma. The basis, intention, deed, and completion. Basically, the nuts and bolts of how we are creating karmic seeds in our mind. Um, so, so basically, just like that process of which is mainly guided by intention, but how we create action in the mind. So that's what we covered last week. And again, it's very clear, all of that's quite clear in the reading. So I'm not going to cover that again. The other aspect, also what we covered last week was what makes karma's particularly heavy, for example, by nature, So killing karma by nature is heavier than stealing karma. And it's kind of obvious, because, we're taking away someone's life, something that's most precious to us. So our life, our body's much more precious than any possession. So for that reason, killing karma is much heavier because it's taking away something much more precious from another being. Another aspect that makes karmas heavier is intention. Depending on the heaviness of the intention in terms of non-virtue. If we do it with a lot of anger or hatred, it makes our karma even heavier. And another aspect was by basis. So, for example, harming a Buddha, harming a holy being like a bodhisattva, even just mentally having ill will is much heavier than it is towards, just one of us, because the power of that being holds like this kind of saintly attitude that really just wants to benefit you. So by us great at creating ill will towards that person, it creates a heavier karma for us. And it also prevents us, it blocks us from receiving like a deeper benefit that we could receive from them. So in many ways, so that's also by basis, by the person. Parents are also heavier, a heavier basis for us because they can't, but what we've received from them this life, minimum our body, again, that we hold most precious, we receive from our parents. So that means any karma we create in connection with parents, positive or negative, becomes heavier. So again, these are all good things to know in terms of we moving into the wholesome deeds. How can we make our karma more powerful? How we could create even more powerful causes of happiness in future lives? So opposite of the 10 non-virtues, basically it means when we talk about the 10 wholesome deeds, we're making a complete determination here to practice the 10 virtues. Example, refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, all these different, it's just the opposite, we're not doing them, we're refraining from doing them. However, to create the karma of completing the 10 wholesome deeds, to create that karma of refraining from killing, it means that we actually intentionally we intentionally kill and create karma. Similarly, we need to intentionally not kill to create this karma. When we think about the basis, how we create karma in the mind, it's not just by not doing it, we're creating karma. We have to create the intention not to kill. So, for example, if you're in a situation with the possibility of killing another creature, but you clearly see the faults of that act, and with the motivation, you concentrate on controlling your physical actions, like, for example, we gave the example last week of killing a mosquito, something that maybe most of us may have done this life, or some sort of innocent being, innocent small bug, So, for example, last week I gave the example of killing mosquitoes. So refraining to create that wholesome deed of refraining from killing. So the basis would be a mosquito. So we would then, so just imagine, a mosquito lands on our arm, So we decide, oh, there's a mosquito. So instead of swatting it or trying to kill it, or even if we see one in the room, we want to kill it so it doesn't harm us. We create this intention, from a realization now understanding karma, that we don't want to do it, and seeing that, or understanding that that is a misdeed, a negativity. So that's the intention. And then the deed becomes not killing the mosquito. And due to that, we create the karma of not killing. So it's not the same as, so that creates, that whole process creates the karma of not killing. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. So of course, day by day, so it's not like day by day, every morning we wake up and, we don't create this intention in our mind every day not to kill. and there's a big difference. So what I want to get into now is the difference between not killing, just generally. We could say, well, I've lived with my friend and both of us don't kill. But the difference would be, by not killing doesn't mean that we don't create that karma. As I say, we have to have a specific event happen, like, a mosquito coming, the basis needs to be there, and then we create the intention not to kill, not to lie, not to steal, to create that karma. However, another way to continually create the karma of not killing and create a very strong imprint on our mental continuum not to kill is by taking vows. And of course, this is what we do as monastics. And also lay people you can take lay vows not to kill, not to lie, not to steal. There's 5 lay vows you can take. So as I say, just because you're not killing doesn't mean that you're accumulating the karma not killing. However, if you take a vow, so when we take the vow, they're usually given by teachers or monastics. When you take that vow in your mental continuum, not to kill for the rest of your life, to try and observe that as much as possible, no matter what situation you're in, you create that good karma continually in your mental continuum. So this is what we call a skillful practitioner, this is taking vows as a way of taking care of your morality, and it's a very important wing in the path to enlightenment. So once we get into the teachings on bodhicitta, and then there's this practice called the 6 perfections. For those of you who may have read some of the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, I have put up some quotes from that book, that His Holiness taught extensively in the years that he's teaching. His Holiness went around the world and taught. It's how to become a saint or a bodhisattva. So the 2nd perfection is morality. It's perfection in morality. And of course, taking any kind of vows is where we practice this limb or wing or perfection in morality. And morality also creates, creating these 10 wholesome deeds is one of the main factors, the practice of morality, in achieving a good future rebirth, of achieving, at the minimum, a human life through the practice of morality. So once we've taken this vow, that means we're taking that vow not to kill. We're holding that intention all the way through our lives. So we don't necessarily need to come across, the mosquito or the spider or the bug or whatever to create the intentional karma not to kill. Once we take that vow, we're holding that intention for the rest of our life. So we're continually creating that karma on our mental continuum. And it's creating this habit in our mind not to kill in future lives. And of course, when we do certain purification practices, there are times when we kill mistakenly or, and even throughout our day, being in this realm of samsara, we're killing mostly unintentionally all the time, but we're involved in a level of killing to survive, to eat, to drive the car, to wear clothes. There's a level of, even though it's not intentional for our side, there's a level of harm going on just for us to survive in this realm. So again, taking the vow not to kill. And of course, when we take refuge, that's the vow, even though we don't take other vows at the time, if we decide to take refuge, then even at that time, we automatically have to take on this vow of no killing. And just try and observe it as much as possible in our daily life. And of course, there's purification practices. So when we do incur a fault, by mostly killing unintentionally, but there's ways to purify that. But because also karma is expandable, so again, this is the really skillful way to create good karma. It's like, again, it's almost like the lazy way, you can take these vows for life. And as it says here, you can also take the 8 Mahayana precepts, which means taking 8 vows for a day. No killing, stealing, lying, you take celibacy for a day. I think no singing and dancing. There's one about no eating after noon. Sometimes people get scared from that one. But either way, there's a way for those of us who feel we can't take it for life. You can actually take these vows for a day. So when we understand karma, what's happening is, even taking for a day, or if we take for life, it's purifying karma as well as killing, because we're holding this intention in our mind not to kill, you know, in any situation, not to lie, not to steal. Sexual misconduct is another one of the lay vows. And another one is the more difficult one for lay Sangha, lay community, is no intoxicants, not taking alcohol or anything that kind of intoxicates us. But there are ways to kind of make that a little bit easier to take for those of you who might be interested in taking that sometime. But we're not going to go into that now. But there's a way to take it where it's absolutely not any alcohol, but it's taking it in a way to not take it so you don't intoxicate yourself. So you can take small amounts in social occasions. But either way, so this is where we really start to create powerful karma by taking vows, abstaining, which allow us to kind of automatically, day by day, create this karma of no killing, no stealing, no lying, these kind of these 5 lay vows. So it's like the most. Many, I guess, many spiritual traditions, they all talk, we have to have love for ourselves, compassion. But in the Buddhist tradition, this is what we would say is the main compassion for ourselves is in context of future lives, taking care of this life. Because already, if we take these vows, we already start to not harm others, not harm ourselves. But in future lives, taking these vows, well, this opens up the path for so much more happiness in future lives. And also not creating these karmas again, because as I say, morality is the main limb, the main practice for achieving a good human life. So in that view as well, we've practiced morality in our past life because we have a human body right now, and we have incredible conditions of being in as I say, a relatively safe country. I mean, one of the results of killing karma is to be born and reborn in like kind of terrifying places, or places where you fear for your life. That's one of the results. Even if you are born human, sometimes you're still born into places that are very terrifying. There's a lot of, harm for the elements, a lot of dangers, you feel in fear for your life. So that's one of the results of killing karma. If you study through the different results of the different karmas. So again, generally speaking, I think most of us can see, we must have created these, I wouldn't doubt that all of us here, just because we already have karma with the Buddhist teachings, we've already taken vows in past life. When we understand the evolution of karma, most of us will have taken vows in our past life. And that's why we get sort of curious. That's why we're attracted to these teachings now. We're attracted to karma. It kind of spikes our curiosity, and also we start to feel like maybe this is the truth because we've heard this in the past, we've practiced these teachings in the past, and then again we meet them in this life and we get inspired again to study and practice according to the teachings in karma, to create causes for future rebirth. So yeah, again, just reiterating, we continually by taking vows and precepts. So again, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to really advertise these 8 Mahayana precepts. We don't offer them as yet so much because everything's so much on Zoom these days. Rinpoche did offer them a couple of times during COVID on Zoom. And if there's any interest, we could do that because it's a wonderful way just to practice living in the vows for 8 days, for one day, and then maybe we feel eventually we could take some of these vows for lifetime, for life, So as I mentioned, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. As a Master Shantideva said, there's no cause for higher rebirth other than ethics, practicing pure morality. And again, it's something His Holiness the Dalai Lama has taught extensively, just even secular ethics, the importance of, even if we can't help others right now, there's Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to say, taking the vows of no killing, no stealing, no lying. I mean, we give so much happiness to others just by truthful speech, just by trying not to harm our body. Insects, bugs, animals, just not by harming them, it gives them so much peace and happiness. Even if we can't help them that much more at the moment, we offer them that peace and happiness. And again, even in our sleep, we create so much merit and good karma by keeping these vows. And again, one of the aspects of karma is that karma is expandable. So its nature is when the karmic seeds in our mental continuum that we plan, the nature of them is they just expand exponentially in the mental continuum. They expand and increase. So small karmas, things that we think are very small right now can become very, very large, very huge, both negatively and positively for our future lives. So that much more, we think about think about the power of vows or taking these, even our small good karmas that we're creating, just trying to rejoice in them because they are creating more and more, they'll become more and more powerful in our mental continuum and ripen in ways that we wouldn't imagine in our future lives. So I say vows really become the container, the main container. Morality is like the container for future happiness. Once we have a human life, if we get a human life, then there's a lot we can do. If we're born in other realms, so some of us might still be grappling a little bit with this concept of other realms, but ideally, if we're born as a human and we're born in a good situation, so if we don't kill or lie or steal, harm others, then generally we should have a good human rebirth. Be born in a peaceful country. If we've got a habit of practicing spiritual teachings, practicing morality, then that habit will continue and we'll meet spiritual teachings again. So that container alone creates so much goodness, freedom for us in that next rebirth. So it's like we've already gifted ourselves this good rebirth. I mean, as I say in the motivation, it's not perfect. We still have stuff. We're still in samsara, so we still have ups and downs. Things still happen. But there's a lot of freedom we have with our human situation right now. And we can continue to gift ourselves with this in the most skillful way is taking vows, or at least trying to abide as much as possible, observing those 10 wholesome deeds, those 10 virtues, non-virtues, abiding by them as much as possible. So again, in the Bodhisattva's way of life, there's the 6 perfections. And generally, I think the way they're presented, there's the generosity, and then the second one's morality. I think I mentioned this before, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. So generally, how it's presented in this book is that generosity is the first perfection because mostly it's the easiest one, to practice. Most people have an ability to practice some level of generosity in their life, even if it's just the generosity of allowing someone to talk, listening to another. So there's many, many ways we can practice generosity. The next one, if we look in the world's more difficult, morality, even that one of not killing. Because, a lot of people think it's okay to fish, they think it's okay to hunt, and maybe we do still, I don't know, maybe we need to explore that further, think about karma more. But, in the light of the other being that's been fished or hunted, it's not very pleasant for them, right? But still, a lot of people find that hard to accept, they justify fishing and hunting in many ways, So some people, fishing's a very peaceful sport, so many people might have a good heart, but they still think that a level of fishing and hunt, these kind of things are still okay. So on that level, we can see spiritually some of the teachings on morality, and especially when we go into other sets of vows like bodhisattva vows, tantric vows, they're more difficult to practice. So that's why I think generosity comes first there. But mostly speaking, the main causes to achieve a good future rebirth, a human rebirth at least, is this practice of morality, abstaining from the 10 non-virtues and practicing the 10 virtues, and also practicing a level of generosity. Because the morality will get you into a good human rebirth, and generosity will allow you to have what you need. You'll have the karmic result of generosity is, of course, receiving wealth, having the comforts, whatever you need in life. So those two together are the main karmic causes for having a human life and also human form, but also having like what you need in that life. Because we all want comfort. We all want to have at least a level of material kind of comfort and satisfaction. We need that, to survive in life. And I think it's really true what His Holiness says, we all need a moral compass. I mean, of course, even parents, most parents, they try to kind of imbue that in their children, to a certain level, according to what their moral compass is. And so there's no question, even if, as I say, even if we can't help others a lot in this life, just holding those vows, that intention not to kill, steal, lie, it offers a huge amount of happiness and peace. It's offering peace to others. And again, this code of morality, abiding by the 10 virtues, I think it does really have a very powerful trickle-down effect on the whole world. Because imagine just that one vow of killing, if everybody decided not to kill, or hold that as much as possible, the world would be quite a different place, So in a way, that's the only way. As Master Shantideva also said, I can't really change the world around me. All I can do is change my own mind. They use the analogy of, much better if I want to tread the whole world, peacefully, and rather than walking on the bare foot, which creates a lot of discomfort. I'm trying to walk across the whole world on the bare foot. Well, rather than covering the whole world with leather so that I can tread comfortably, much more important to cover the soles of my feet, just put shoes on and then I can walk the whole world. So similarly, we can't really change and affect what's out there, but what we can really start with, what the main sort of point in this lower scope of the Lam Rim that we're studying right now is trying to observe karma and trying to kind of really get clear on our moral compass, how we can practice that really clearly in our daily life by, and again, mainly what the Buddha's asking us is try as much as possible to practice these 10 virtues. And just, it keeps our life, the package of life very simple, when we sort of just have these container of vows, it actually really simplifies the life the more we practice them. The more we practice more purification, our life gets much more clean, clear, and simple. And that's why monastics take vows, to simplify, it cleans out the mind. So kind of other realizations as well, other deeper understandings of the teachings can start to blossom in the heart and mind. So again, just another aspect of karma that I wanted to try and cover in the death and rebirth module, but ran out of time. So it comes up here anyway. So there's different distinctions between karma in terms of future lives, what happens as we go into future life's happiness. There's projecting and completing karma. So maybe I want to ask someone, who knows, projecting, there's another term that you might see for projecting karma. There's another term that's used as throwing karma. So I know there's at least a couple of people in the class who would know what these terms are. So I'm going to see if anyone want to put their hand up. I'm looking at Urson Bay, but is there anyone else who wants to give it a shot if what they understand by maybe projecting or throwing karma and completing karma? Not seeing any hands come.
Stan
Oh,
has.
Stan. Okay, good. Yep.
Hi. Yes, I understand from previous teachings that throwing karma, the first time I heard that term was the conditions around your death, what happens at that time, dictates what was referred to as throwing karma. So I wonder if that's in the right direction you're referring to.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Throwing karma, projecting karma, it refers to the main karmic action that determines, as you say, the overall direction of one's rebirth. So basically, it's a way it like kind of throws you, it's a main karmic action that throws you into your next rebirth. That's what's called projecting karma. And what would be, and I'll give like some examples of this as we move on. But yeah, that's right, Stan, what you're saying. And then completing karma, what would that aspect be in terms of future life?
Is that a question for me?
Well, if you know it, Stan, go ahead.
I'm not sure about that one, so I'll allow some of my learned colleagues to
Okay.
respond.
Anyone else want to hazard a guess at what aspect completing karma is in terms of what's kind of moving us into future lives? Well, I'm going to ask Urs then, because Urs will know.
Okay, so I mean, completing karma is kind of fills in the details of your next lifetime. So projecting karma throws you into some new existence, and then all the little details are then the completing karma in your new life.
That's right. So just to make that clear, so we're going to do 4 examples. So maybe we'll start with you, Urs, with the first example. An example of, so we're talking about what karmas bring us into, these are the 2 karmas that kind of bring us into our new life, projecting and completing karma. So an example of projecting would be a good rebirth and good karma. What would that look like, Urs?
I mean, it would have to be some kind of complete karma with all the 4 factors in place.
Yes.
So it would be like an act of generosity, and then you rejoice that you have been generous, and that carries on to a future lifetime, a good rebirth.
Yeah, but what would the good rebirth look like? So a good rebirth projecting karma, not so much what the karma is, but what would the rebirth be of a good karma? If we've created like really positive seeds, like, keeping vows, as you say, one example, or just being a really loving, good person in that life.
Mhm.
So that karma projects us into a future, a good rebirth. So what would a good rebirth look like with good karma? So
I mean, it would be another human rebirth, or maybe a
yes.
God existence, something like that.
Yes, yeah. And then what would what would the completing karma be?
I mean, it determines maybe your status in this life. If you're a poor person, if you are live in a wealthy family. I mean, if it's a nice country, if it's a poor country, if you might live in Africa and some, the desert or.
Yeah, so an example of, sorry, I'm not being very clear, someone who's projecting at the time of death, you're projecting karma's good and you're good,
Yeah,
you're completing karma's good. That would be someone, for example, who has a good human rebirth and maybe born into a wealthy family, for example. Yeah.
right.
And then you've got another example of a completing karmas. You have a good projecting karma, but you have difficult completing karma. So what would that look like, Urs?
I mean, you might live in a poor situation in some war zone, maybe, or some unfortunate circumstances. You might have a short life,
Yeah, yeah.
health problems.
Good. And then if you have, so another projecting karma that would be a difficult karma, and again, this comes from possibly, again, some of the heavier, creating some of the 10 non-virtues and maybe really heavy ones for past life. So you would have a difficult rebirth, but you might still have good karma and that, good completing karma. What would that look like?
I mean, you might have like a rebirth as an animal, but you might
Yeah,
be a pet of some
yeah.
nice family, and they feed you and take care of you, something
Yeah.
like this.
And then, so are we getting the idea here, everyone? I want to see if I have some nods. What kind of what happens with certain karmas, mostly coming for a lot of these 10 non-virtues, if we practice them really strongly and well, they become the basis for a very strong karma that projects us into a good life. And then if we've practiced generosity, the completing karma might be we're born in a wealthy family. However, if we've killed heavily in this life, the last example would be of bad, like bad rebirth, a low rebirth, and also heavy completing karma. What would that be an example of, Urs?
I mean, you might experience a hell rebirth, and then you might
Yes.
experience a lot of killing and
Yeah.
torture and pain in the hell realms.
So I'm just trying to give an example, kind of give you an idea here how karma ripens. So usually at the death time, we have these 2 aspects of karma ripening. We have a sort of main projecting karma that comes from, and again, we're going to go into how these karmas ripen in terms of what would be one that might ripen first or whatever. We're going to touch that point. But you have a main projecting karma that projects you into your future rebirths. And then you have one that completes. It's almost like the projecting karma sets the stage, right, of where you're going to be, you know? And then the throwing one is like the movie your life. What really unfolds there? How does it complete? What are all the details? What ensues from that? So we have these two types of karma that generally kind of bring about our future lives. The other aspects, so again, we're just covering different aspects of karma here. So another aspect of karma is individual and collective karma. So individual karma is really what we've been talking about, karma that we experience that arises in our mental continuum. And it's something that we experience, we create it, and then we experience it, the results of these in this and future lives. Collective karma is a little bit different. So the classic explanation for so-called shared karma is that everyone experiencing is this ripening of karma have participated in a certain action or a certain event beforehand that brought about their experiencing this result together. But how that happens is quite complex. I did touch upon collective karma a little bit in a previous class. There's different types of collective karma. So in the broadest sense, a collective karma, you could say, is all of us experience living on this earth, this planet together, this particular, or you could say this human realm. I mean, even the animal realm, they experience a certain collective karma. They're all in a particular realm together, and they experience the world in different ways, but in a sort of similar way. Similarly, us as humans, we experience this world, this universe in a certain way. And this is a type of collective karma. It's not that things really exist out there. It's that we have an experience, a shared experience of being in this kind of human realm together and experience things in a similar way. The narrower such as the karma for those who will inhabit a particular place in Earth. So you could say again, maybe those of us, there's another way where collective karma operates where us as in the States, you know. We share a particular language, country, politics. We see the world, of course, maybe in political views kind of differently, but we're not going to go there. But, you know, there's a collective karma of being in America together, being in this land together, sharing a language together, sharing certain cultural norms that we generally agree. Generally, there's an agreement on things. So that's a narrower level of karma in relation to the human realm as a whole. There's an even another narrower level of collective karma for beings who have a specific shared experience at a certain time. Example, the other day in Scots Valley, there was a small tornado. Did any of you hear about that? I'm sure some of you did, yeah? So, I mean, that was just an experience a few people experienced. Fortunately, no one died for that. But, you know, and again, there was people, so there was that tornado happened in Target car park. And, you know, different people experienced it in a different way, but it was still a shared karma, you know. Earthquakes, harm for the elements, they're a little bit different shared karma. Of course, these, what we call random killing, when somebody goes onto the street and just shoots some people die, some people get injured. That's a kind of what we would say a smaller example of a collective or a shared karma. And of course, that's all come about, especially those more specific ones, you could say are a little bit easier to pinpoint because it's a fewer people. So you could say, well, maybe there's obviously something they created together in the past to harm others, especially if it's a connection, one person harming them, then there's a shared karma. But again, because it is the more hidden phenomena at our level, it would be very difficult for us to exactly pinpoint and say this happened. That's only at the level of Buddha that you can say that. But with our understanding of karma, even at this level, we can sort of pinpoint that there's been a sort of shared harm done between that group at a certain period in the past, in past lives. It's ripened. The causes and conditions have come together for that to ripen for them right now. And for us, when situations like that happen. So that's just a little bit, just touching on a little bit collective karma. It can be very large in terms of the human realm and how we experience things, what our experience of the universe, phenomena, each other is. It's a similarity that's even a little bit different for the animal realm. can be it can go broad, it can go very narrow, it can go narrower into just being in this country, how we communicate, how we experience things just as a country, as a culture is a little bit different from humans. And then even in a narrower sense of how we experience and experience karma, you know, just in a few people, we in a family at certain times, you know. So there's what we experience and then what we share in an experience in terms of collective karma. So again, going back to this sort of completing how karma ripens at the time of death. And again, this is what I wanted to try and cover in the death and rebirth. But as I say, it comes up in karma here. It's just to kind of drop this in. We won't need to know this for the assessment. These are just little details that, again, every time we hear them, they just land a little bit more for us and they slowly, slowly become clearer every time we hear the teachings on karma. So what ripens at the time of death? So generally speaking, karma that ripens at the death time in terms of throwing us, this karma, as Urs was saying, that will then throw us into a future rebirth, what tends to ripen first in the order is that one, what's the sort of heavier one or stronger in our mental continuum. So, so it's the one that's it's kind of the most powerful in the mental continuum. And again, whether it's more powerful positively or more powerful negatively, that's the one that's most likely to be the one that throws us into a future rebirth. So again, if we've, you know, holding on a positive note, you know, if we've taken vows or we've done a lot of good deeds, for example, with our mother and father, you know, that becomes heavy because of so deeds with the mother and father, you know, in that sense, a positive way. Maybe we did a lot of caregiving for them, you know, up until their death, or we just supported them a lot through our life as we became an adult because of the power of the mother and father as a basis, you know, they're a powerful object for us, then that becomes a heavy good karma. And that could be the one that projects us again into a good future rebirth. Or if we have a spiritual teacher, you know, a guru, and we've done a lot of service to that being, we've followed their advices, again, that's a powerful object. So that's a likely one as well that can ripen at the death time as one of the heavier ones in a positive way, you know. So that can make the karma more heavier. Now, if there's two karmas that we've created that are both heavy, now we could have a really heavy one that's not good, you know, like, and a heavy one that's good. And if they're both similar in heaviness or power, then the one that we've created closest to the death time is more likely to ripen at the death time. And if those two are kind of similar, then what happens is the next one that would ripen, if the karmas are both powerful and similar in terms of closeness, then whatever karma is more habitual, that we've created the habit more. So we might have two most powerful karmas and we've created them at a similar time. But the one that we've been more in the habit of creating, then would ripen. Gets a wee bit complex, but so that's the one that's going to ripen, most likely to ripen at the death time. So again, these are kind of a little bit more technical logistics, but just to kind of maybe just hold, the main one we might want to think about really is what you know, in terms of the basis, what kind of karma are we doing to help others, people that are more powerful in our lives, and how much we are able to create the 10 virtues in our life. That becomes very powerful in terms of if we hold vows, you know, if we hold them for a long time in our life, they become very powerful through the power of the vow and also through the power of because of the intention, we're holding that tension not to kill for a long time, not to lie for a long time. So that starts to become powerful in our mind, you know. So that can be, again, this is where the practice morality, not holding vows, can become something very powerful to project us into a human life. So I hope this is making some sense. We're trying to get to this place logically. You know, I'm trying to get to this place logically. And again, habitually, because we're you know, if we decide to take vows, you know, if we're already taking them and we live another 5, 10, 15 years, that habit of holding the vow for a long time, the intention, holding that intention for a long time, it's very, very powerful for a good future rebirth. So that's kind of how it's working. We're creating that powerful karma in our mental continuum to project or throw ourselves into another human life. So the more we kind of study and think about karma, especially these teachings on morality, these 10 virtues, it's like that really becomes a way to hold our mind, hold our karma, take care of our karma for future lives, this practice of morality. You know, it creates this container that brings us in, that projects us into a good future rebirth. And then practice, for example, generosity, you know, that creates a great completing karma so that we take care of ourselves for future lives, you know. I mean, we want to have wealth, we want to have comfort now. So that much we can practice generosity now, that much more we're taking care of future life as well. There's 3 ways that karma can ripen. So mostly, as I've mentioned, most of the karma we're experiencing right now is going to ripen in our future lives. It doesn't, you know, in every moment we have the freedom to create actions, you know. That's not something separate or opposite. We have the freedom moment by moment to create actions with our body, speech, and mind. We have a sense of will. And the more wisdom we have, the more we can create positive actions, you know, with our body, speech, and mind, the more we understand karma. But generally, in terms of what's ripening for us right now, mostly it's the view of our past life, you know. However, there are certain karmas, when they become very powerful, that can ripen in this life. So does anyone know which karmas created with others that can actually ripen as a result in this life? Anybody? I have a feeling that anyone want to put their hand up? I have a feeling that Bay might know some. We'll ask Bay this time. We asked yours before. Bay?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
The one that would certainly ripen in this life?
Not certainly, but it's possible to ripen in this life. It can ripen. It's not for sure, but it's possible to be experienced in this current life. And it's with certain beings.
Oh, is that like related to the 5 heinous crimes with the 5?
Mostly they would ripen in future lives. I mean, you can start to experience some of the results, though it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, Urs, maybe you want to mention?
I mean, I would say if you do something as a child, a very powerful action that might ripen later in your life.
Oh, I see. It's possible, yeah. So things, particularly a couple of the things that Rimshi mentioned, and there may be more, you know, but the ones that I'm more aware of is karmas that you create with your spiritual teacher, someone you label as a guru, because that's the most powerful object. They can ripen in this life already. You know, for example, Milarepa, one example is Milarepa, yeah. I mean, he created so much heavy karma. But because he then kind of, you know, regretted that, found a spiritual teacher, he was able to purify all that, and also he served his teacher continually for many years, purified the karma, and he wasn't only able just to purify the karma, he was able to achieve enlightenment in that life because he made certain auspicious gestures and offerings with his teacher, so that was able to ripen his karma in that life, you know. So a lot to do with that was because of the relationship with his spiritual teacher. Another one, so with the guru, another one that can start to ripen, you might not get all the effects, but certainly heavy killing karmas. I mean, something like killing a Buddha, killing a monastic, the effects of that can start to ripen in this life. Killing a bodhisattva, harming bodhisattvas, you can start to see the effects ripen in this life because the object is so powerful that you've harmed. And another one I want to mention, because most of us, you know, at least in the past, if not now, depends if parents are still alive, but also karma with your parents, because the parents is a powerful object, can start to ripen in this life for you. Positive or negative, depending, you know. You might not get all the results, but you could start to see some of the result, you know, some sort of karma can ripen in connection with any really powerful positivity you've done with your parents, or similarly negativity can start to manifest in this life. That's just a few I'm aware of. There's probably more. But as I say, a lot of the kind of main karmas that we create in this life are going to be experienced in future rebirth. Experienced in the very, you know, mostly in the very next life. And then other ones that the sort of powerful ones, and then the least powerful ones will be experienced in lives beyond. And again, we start to understand that a little bit more, I think, when you'll study with Venerable Sangi Kadro. You'll study the Wheel of Life with her, and she goes into the different variety, a little bit more, I think, I think it comes up in that that module on the Wheel of Life, and a little bit more understanding of how karma ripens in this life, future life, and then future lives, you know, more future lives. But again, I just want to try to mention, you know, about like the power of these objects in our life, teachers, family. I mean, I don't want to say this because I'm a monastic, but if you take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, then the Sangha becomes one of the, you know, a more powerful object in your life, and especially someone who's got realizations as a Sangha, they become more powerful, you know. So anyone kind of holding realizations, they become like a really powerful object to create, you know, hopefully as much good karma as possible as well. Okay, so to get into the last part of the class, first of all, does anyone, I mean, I hope it was sort of clear there. It's a lot to fit in, but does anyone have any question before we go into the part on purifying, the last part of the class? Does anyone have any questions or comments, or not quite clear on any of that?
We have Stan and Tommy.
Okay, Stan?
Hi. Yes, when you were speaking of collective karma, shared karma, shared experience, I was making me think about the fact that I was born as a twin.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
certainly, I mean, I've been a twin most of my life. I lost my twin 6 years ago. He died before me, of course. Now, I once had a class with a class where I asked the teacher that Venerable Renee, in fact,
Oh,
what was the meaning of being born a twin? And all he could tell me was we were in the bardo state together at the same time. And that's all he would say about it. But it makes me wonder about, you know, what shared karma I have had with my twin. You seem to speak of it as if it was a negative thing that we had together. I assume it could equally be a positive thing that we had together, that we shared in a previous life, that we were born together again. Would I be right in that assumption?
well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's inherently, it's not it's definitely not necessarily a negative. I mean, the fact that you were both, but it means, I mean, all I can say, you have some close karmic connection. I mean, you could say maybe it's negative if you had a really difficult time with your twin, you know, and you just didn't get on from the start. Maybe
No,
you
that was not the case.
yeah, so then of course if you kind of have a nice relationship with your twin, then it doesn't stem from, you know, being born as a twin doesn't stem from necessarily, I mean, you're both born human, so you're both born human
Right.
because you practice morality in your past life, yeah. That's what brings in a human life. And how that completes, you know, is certainly if you both have a generally nice relationship together, then that's you've created probably good karma together.
Right.
You know, but I don't really know. I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, maybe you need to have and maybe ask a Geshe or something. What the
Sure.
because I don't know what the specific karma is. It just means that you've created close karma together. You know,
Yes.
and you've, as Venerable Renee said, you've entered the bardo together. You both have a connection with the mother and father. And in the bardo, you were in the bardo together. You both had this pull towards the mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Right.
and you're both male,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
So yeah, you both had a pull at the same time, and through some karmic connection with last, you must have just been quite well bonded in a previous life, and it
Right.
looks like it might have been a positive bond if you've basically had quite a nice, harmonious relationship with your twin.
Yeah, as it certainly was in this life. And the fact that he died rather suddenly 6 years ago, and I'm very healthy and plan to live hopefully as long as possible, but that he died before me and he met the Dharma. He had a chance to get into it, but he rejected it. He didn't find a way to have it appeal to him. And totally opposite for me is I just totally gravitated towards it. And he also engaged in drinking and smoking, which once I took my vows, it stopped completely, and it's been a great blessing for me. So I think that alone created a longer lifetime for me, and maybe a happier lifetime that I was able to find the Dharma and
Yeah.
practice it to some degree. And but
Yeah,
probably
I
just
mean, your bond may not have been so much of a spiritual bond. It's possible. It might have just been like some friendship, or who knows, you know. There's some karmic bond together, but it might not have been more spiritual. I mean, I feel like that a bit sometimes. I mean, I love my parents, but I don't, spiritually we can be a little bit different, you know. I mean, there's
yes,
similarities, but parents or siblings, a lot of us, we're kind of unique, almost maybe individual in our connection with the Dharma, you know.
right, right,
And whether we're twins or not, just our siblings in general it doesn't always match, you know. So, in fact, my many years in the Dharma, there's not a lot of people I meet who have family members, mother and father, siblings who are also in the Dharma. It's usually the opposite. It's quite
right.
rare to meet someone who's like, oh, they have one or two siblings, or their mother, their father are also like engaged in the Dharma. That's quite rare, you know. So. It would be very rare to have both of you have an interest in the Dharma as well as being twins. That would be really unusual. It would be wonderful, but I guess you have this karmic bond, so I guess you can all you can do is dedicate and make prayers, isn't it? And be an example.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Tommy, you had a question?
Oh yeah, thanks. And hopefully I maybe should already know this. I'm not sure because I've been a little bit behind, but I just had a quick question when you were
Don't
talking
worry, you shouldn't always have to know everything.
when you were talking about projecting karma and completing karma, I think you said the term difficult karma, and can you clarify a little bit what that means?
Well, difficult, maybe that's not the right expression, but I mean, it's difficult, if you're born in a lower realm, if you're born as an animal, you can have different levels of karma ripening, I mean, you can be born in we could say unfavorable karma, maybe that's a bit.
Okay.
I
Okay,
mean,
so you're talking about
unfavorable karma is difficult,
yeah.
but we could say favorable and unfavorable, that's probably a better
Okay.
expression.
So it's when you're
So,
talking about like the ripening of karma.
yes, yeah.
Yes.
So obviously we all want what's favorable, and we'd all want, if we really thought about it deeply. I mean, I know people say, oh, I always see these ads about, oh, that dog, that cat, they have a good life. I remember my mum's neighbor had this cat, and I don't know, they used to talk about, oh, that cat's so lucky, it doesn't have any problems, it doesn't, it doesn't have any worries or stress, it gets its food, clothing, and shelter. But these things we have to, some of us have done that already, but you have to investigate what it really is like. And again, for cats, I mean, well, they create a lot of killing karma, Dogs, maybe less. And of course, a lot of them are very intelligent, but we would still call that, mostly speaking, an unfavorable rebirth. I mean, you do get some genuinely special animals who might be bodhisattvas in disguise, for sure. And some animals do create, I think, maybe better karma than some humans. They use what intelligence they have or what, some of them are very emotionally sensitive as well, they do really benefit others, But still, there's limitations with that rebirth, so we would call it mostly an unfavorable rebirth, There's a lot of freedom and ability we have as humans, so maybe the term, sorry, favorable and unfavorable is a better term.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So let's go back. Oh, so why we need to purify. So this is a big one. And this is really, hopefully, if some of us have that already, we already do engage in purification practices. And for those of us who don't, maybe we start to think about this more after doing this module. The importance of needing to purify. Let's just get this slideshow up and running again. So, one who previously made bad karma, but who performs and creates good karma, brightens the world like the moon appearing from behind a cloud. So I just wanted to touch on the story. I found it quite a beautiful story when I first heard it about Angulimala. How many of us, I'm sure Urson Bay, how many of us know the story of Angulimala? I see Ladan nodding. Any other? Oh, Julian knows. Terry, you know? Terry, you know the story of Angulimala? No? Dana, you heard this story? No? Urson Bay, yeah? Anyway, it's quite inspiring because Angulimala, there's a whole sutra about that talks about the story of Angulimala. So he was born around the time of the Buddha, and he was born in India. He was very intelligent, and he met his spiritual teacher, and he was a great student actually of his teacher. But some of the fellow students got very jealous of him, and they managed to set him up against the teacher. So the teacher no longer kind of liked Angulimala. And so in an attempt to get rid of Angulimala, the teacher sent him off on this mission. He said that he had to find 1,000 human fingers to complete his studies. So in order to do that, of course, he had to maim and kill and do all number of things, you know. So he had, you know, he was actually in the beginning quite a decent person, but because he developed this faith in this teacher and decided wholeheartedly to follow the teacher's advice, you know, the more he sort of tried to, in the beginning, he tried not to kill others and just try and take their finger, but it became more and more impossible. So it came to this point that he actually had to start killing people to be able to get these fingers. And so he started to, and actually you can see in the picture there, he made this necklace, and every time he killed someone, he added a finger to the necklace. And at some point, he was hiding out in this forest, and he would just attack people when they came through the forest or the jungle. And the king eventually heard about Angulimala as this killer and sent out an army to catch him. And of course, this was at the time of the Buddha. So the Buddha heard about Angulimala, and he decided that he was going to go and find him. And everybody advised the Buddha not to go in there because he was this dangerous brigand, you know, dangerous killer. But of course, the Buddha didn't have any fear. So the Buddha went off into the forest, and at this time, the Angulimala already had 999 fingers that he had collected. So I heard that he hung some from the trees. I mean, he had this necklace, but he wasn't able to hold the 999 fingers around his throat, you know. So he had them in various places, but he'd only had one more finger to get. So then, you know, one day the Buddha decided he was going to walk in the forest. So he walked through the forest, and Angulimala saw the Buddha and started running after him. So now he realized that it was, you know, the Buddha was a special person, but he was determined, you know, he was going to get this last finger. So the Angulimala started to run after the Buddha, but while he was running after the Buddha, and the Buddha was walking very slowly, he couldn't find him. He couldn't catch him. He couldn't understand. He was running and the Buddha was walking, but he wasn't able to catch up to the Buddha. And he was going faster and faster, but still he wasn't able to catch the Buddha. So he shouted out to the Buddha, "I can't run anymore. Please, can you stop? Can you stop?" And the Buddha was still walking, and he replied to Angulimala, "I have stopped, Angulimala. Now you must too stop." And Angulimala got kind of confused about this. And he thought, well, the Buddha's claiming to stop, but he's still walking. He says, "I know this is a special being, but still, I can't, you know, he couldn't understand." So he shouted, he asked the Buddha, "You know, you're still walking, but I've stopped. So even though I've stopped, you say that you haven't. I don't understand. Can you tell me the meaning of this?" So the Buddha replied, "Angulimala, I have stopped being violent towards living beings. I've given up harming beings once and for all. You, though, continue to kill and harm all those you meet. That's how I have stopped, and that's how you haven't stopped." So Angulimala became deeply affected because, of course, the power, the Buddha's words has a lot of power. So he, in that moment, sort of knelt in front of the Buddha and made a vow and commitment to stop and ask for the Buddha's teachings and became a devout student of the Buddha. And in that very lifetime, through much purification, he became a monastic, a monk, and through much purification, he was able to purify all the karmas of cutting off those 999 fingers, of killing, maiming, whatever he needed to do. And he actually became, a gifted teacher in that life as well. So just to show that anything's possible, we can purify any karmas. As I mentioned before, the life story of Milarepa, he was a great practitioner, I think around about the 11th, 12th century. And he also killed around about 30 people through black magic. He met his spiritual teacher, and through great hardship and following, devotedly the instructions of his teacher, he was also able to purify and achieve enlightenment in that life. So karmas, we can purify any karmas. That's what these two stories sort of show, that any karma is possible to purify. And as Lama Yeshe says, we see the problems of the people we are with, but we don't see our own. We think we are pure. Such are the limits of samsaric mind. So it's possible before we met the Dharma, we always thought that, well, I'm okay and the problem's out there. That's why I feel happy when we recognize that we need purification, that there is something we can do to improve our lives. And as Lama says, it's actually, it's a kind of realization, when we start to feel more deeply, okay, what's the main causes of my suffering? The Buddha taught it's karma and delusion. I'm starting to catch on about karma. Some of us are quite well caught on. Some of us, as we say, have already taken vows. Some of us already engage in purification. But for those of us who are just hearing karma for the first or maybe second time, it's like we start to catch on. Well, what's the problems are really coming from? To one extent, to both extents, it's delusion and karma, but many of our problems come from unpurified karma, karma that's sitting in the mind that's not purified. And we certainly want to purify it because we don't want to experience the results. So how do we purify? There's something called the four opponent powers. And this is what we rely on mostly to purify any action. So even the great lamas, the great gurus, Lama Atisha, he's a great lama from the 11th century who basically brought all the teachings of the Buddhas together, there's 84,000 sets of teachings. And he was the one that brought them together in this sort of package of the Lam Rim for us, so we can study them in this more concise and succinct and direct way, and for us more palatable, easy way, So he was out of his kindness, And even he, who was a great holy being, practiced ardently the four opponent powers. Whenever he felt that he transgressed or created any small negativity, we immediately do these four opponent powers to purify. So what are they? The power of regret. So the first one is, so we generally do these in conjunction with another practice, but we'll just go over these four powers. So what do we do? The four power of regret. Power of regret, in a sense, so we rely on that like it's a bit like taking poison. So for example, and again, we all do this in our daily life. So again, Christine, who was it? Christina, you were at the Copan West. So we did this a little bit during the Copan West. And I know a few of you might be familiar with these already. So power of regret is first power we rely on. So these are the 4 R's. That's an easy way to remember them. First one is regret, So actually, if the minute we do, now that we know karma, and already in our life, sometimes we say something harsh to someone, or we might lie about someone, or we might, harm somebody mistakenly, and we already do that, I think we all develop regret at certain times with actions we do in our daily life, our body, speech, and mind. So this is just bringing this more clearly to any actions we do, relying on the power of regret to purify. So, for example, if we maybe say something harsh to someone, and we regret it immediately, that can already, might not purify it completely, but it can already dampen the effects of it straight away, if we regret it right away. So power of regret basically means, though, getting more clear about it. So we might naturally regret something, but in terms of really understanding karma more clearly, regret comes about because we don't want to experience the result. That much more we understand and have conviction in, the non-virtues. And I mean, there's many non-virtues. We've got the list of 10, but there's more on top of that. Anything that basically causes harm to others is a non-virtue, with our body, speech, and mind. So that much, if we understand that actually that's going to create a result for us, that harm, then it's like you want to remove it like you're removing poison. That's the analogy you use. It's like getting really clear that we want to clean it out. Like we want to imagine we've just eaten something and someone says, oh, there's some bacteria or some poison in that. We'd want to get it out of our system as quickly as possible. So it's a bit like that. And that's how Lama Tisha practiced. Every time he saw himself do a negativity, I mean, without being neurotic, but he would immediately purify, because he understood the evolution of karma, He understood that that's going to create future unhappiness and also blocks realizations. Karma blocks our mind, so we're not able to achieve realizations. So regret, it works a bit like that. We regret it because we harmed the other person, but we also regret it because we don't want to experience the result of that karma. That's the first R. The second R is the power of reliance. So to purify even further, to do a deeper clean, we rely on the second R, the power of reliance. So refuge. So again, in the beginning of this practice, again, if we decide to take refuge, or whatever practice we're doing, we take refuge in that. And we develop a mind of bodhicitta. So I'm purifying by taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, their the teachings, and also I want to do this not just for myself, I have compassion for myself, but I want to be able to benefit other sentient beings. I want to achieve enlightenment. So we rely on this power of refuge. And again, when we study the refuge module, we'll talk a little bit more about that aspect of refuge, how that influences our life and our practice, how that often becomes like the sort of seat of our practice. And bodhicitta, how having a positive motivation, the bodhicitta, when we do their practice. So we rely on the power of relying on that. The power of the remedy, the third R, that's actually, and we're going to go through a few of the remedies that we can use to purify. The power of the remedy is the actual practice. Now, one is Vajrasattva, there's another one called Sutra recitation, but I'll list them just at the end of the class. So then we do the remedy, we take the medicine, whatever that is we're going to take, and then we rely on the power of resolve. And again, I think we all practice that to a certain extent, more or less in our lives right now. This kind of resolve or conviction that I'm not going to do that again. So even in our daily lives, we do something, we regret it, I'm not going to do that again. But this resolve is maybe a bit more clear, like a really, making a stronger conviction. So if it's something that we can't do realistically hold, like I'm not going to think something negative about that person for the rest of my life, and it's a really challenging person, that's not realistic. But we could say, at least for today, I'm really going to try not to follow, even if a negative thought comes in my mind, I'm not going to follow about that person. I'm not going to have ill will towards that person. That's one way, just to take it for the day, for a certain amount of time. So that's what we call the power of resolve, but making that resolution realistic, building up the amount of time you can hold that sort of commitment in your heart and mind for, And again, that just chips away at that habit of harming yourself and others. It's just chipping away in a sort of healthy way that's manageable. So again, when we do the practice day, we'll go through these 4 powers again and how they work in the context of a particular practice. What do these purify? So why we use these 4 R's, these 4 opponent powers, is because they purify results of the 10 non-virtues. So we mentioned before like throwing karma, complete throwing karma, projecting karma. For 10 non-virtues that are completed fully, there's a ripening aspect. So for example, we take the example of killing karma, yeah? So okay, we might say, well, this life, I've not killed that much and I haven't done it, or if I have, it was by mistake and do. But, if we've been here since beginningless lifetimes, we've got an array of stuff that still needs to be purified, yeah? There's no question. As Lama said, we're not really that pure, So we think we're pure, but, we have a bundle of stuff still to purify in our mental continuum if we've had many, many, many lifetimes. So ripening aspect, take an example of the non-virtue killing karma. Our ripening aspect to that would be a rebirth in the lower realms. So ripening aspect is like this throwing karma. It means where you will be reborn due to that action. So these are the results of the 10. So the next one is experiencing the results similar to the cause. So again, for whatever negative, complete non-virtue we create, there's another result we have, the one that's similar to the cause. So again, so we might know if we have a complete killing karma, we might go to the lower realms, but then after we get out of the hell realm, it means that we might be born into the human life when we've sort of we've purified some of that karma from being in the hell realm. So next life we might get a human rebirth, but it might mean that we have a short life in that human life. That's experiencing the result of that action that's similar to the cause. So due to killing in past life, a heavy killing karma, complete karma, we were born in the lower realms. It lasted for a certain amount of time. Then we're born as a human, but there's still some of that trickle-on effect to that karma. So that life, even if we're a human, we might have a short life. We could even die in the womb. We might be aborted, depending on the heaviness of the karma we created. So that's something called the experiencing the result similar to the cause. So the next one that happens from the results from these actions, the third one, creating the result, we create the result similar to the cause. So we just not only experience the result by being killed or having a short life or having a lot of sickness, but we also create the result similar to the cause. That means that, okay, we might have went to the lower realms and maybe we don't go to the hell, but we get born as an animal, which we say is a lighter karma. It's a bit easier than being in the hell. It's still unfavorable, but it's a lighter karma. But even in that life, as an animal, maybe we're born as a cat, for example, or some type of other animal that needs to kill. Some animals kill to survive, some animals just kill for play, but we're still killing in that life. So Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and I mean, in the teachings, it says that's the most dangerous one. Or we might get out of the human realm, and we might still get into the human realm, but we kill. We have no problem with hunting, killing. We might kill other humans, or we might just think it's okay to hunt other animals, and we maybe have an appetite for that as well, because we've done it in our previous lives, So even we get into the human realm, we have this kind of appetite, or at least a familiarity with killing. So again, why is it the worst? Because we're just creating the karma over and over again to go to lower rebirths, unfavorable rebirths. So what we're doing, and then the last result that comes from a complete non-virtue of killing is the possessed result. So again, all of this this comes in your readings. So you can read some of these results of the different karmas and what happens to them, how you get the main one, and then you get these sort of completing or trickle effects that happen because you've created these non-virtues. The possessed result means that you are, again, from killing karma, that you're also born in an environment, where there's wars, where you feel fearful, you never feel at ease, or there might be dangerous animals, it might be full of disease. So your lifespan will end up being short, or you feel in danger a lot of the time. So again, that's what we call an environmental result, or possessed result. It's often called one or the other. So this is actually this is the whole array. This is the whole package from one non-virtue, that's sort of fully completed. You can get all this kind of ripening results. So what these 4 ours, these 4 opponent powers do is they purify, they cover all of that. They purify all of these results by doing these 4 powers. Regret purifies the results similar to the cause, which means that purifies, for example, if you're born in a human realm, but you could eventually have a shorter life. Well, that regret purifies that result. Reliance purifies the environmental results. So relying on the refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and with bodhicitta, purifies the results of being in a war-torn place, being born there. Even if you're born human, you're born in a dangerous environment or an unhealthy environment. So that purifies that. The remedy, in terms of example of Vajrasattva, the purification practice, whatever practice you engage in, purifies the ripened result. So that's actually purifying the result to go to the hell realms. That purifies that, or the animal realm. The unfavorable rebirth, it purifies that. And the resolve purifies the actions similar to the cause. So that's purifying the habit of killing, the habit of lying, the habit of stealing. It's purifying that aspect of the karma. So actually, it's a very, very skillful package because it's purifying all these aspects of karma for us in one practice. So how we do these practices, I'm just going to try and finish off in the next few minutes. I said it might last till about 22 this class tonight. So there's different types of purification. So we do these 4 opponent powers in relation to practices like the 35 Buddhas. That's a prostration practice where you recite the name of the Buddhas, and you also bring about into mind the 4 opponent powers. So they're encapsulated in that practice. You recite mantras. Now, the most powerful one is, how many of us do a Vajrasattva purification practice already? I'm sure Urson Bay do. And any other hands? Ladan and Kate, great. Terry, yes. And there are opportunities to do that through Land of Medicine Buddha. 5 days a week, they offer that practice. And as I said, during the practice day, we're going to do the Vajrasattva practice and just go over in a little bit more detail those 4 opponent powers. But that's one of the more powerful ones. But there's any mantras. Any spiritual practice you engage in prostration, reciting mantras, reciting sutras. So for myself, one of the main practices Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave for me was making water bowl offerings. And so that's also, I definitely felt the benefits of doing that for many, many years. I felt like slowly, that sort of in my heart, everything got a bit lighter, in my experience. So that I feel these practices definitely work. I did want to just share a story of one, also writing out sutras. So I have one. I lived with one monk when I lived at Lama Zopa Rinpoche's house in Aptos. There was one monk there, Venerable Sering. I may have mentioned him before, and he wrote out, his main practice was writing out this sutra on emptiness, the Prajnaparamita Sutras. And that was the main thing that he did. That was his main job there. And Rinpoche wanted to do that for the organisation, for the success of FPMT and also for the projects. It's a lot of merit writing out. He wrote out in gold these wisdom sutras. So that was his main practice. And at another point, he took teachings on the Vajrakutter Sutra, which is also a more concise sutra on emptiness. And it's supposed to be very powerful, that one, for purifying and for removing obstacles. So he received the teachings and he received the transmission from, I don't know, I can't remember which Lama, but he shared this story with us one time. He was feeling very happy, had received the teachings and all the benefits of reciting the sutra. So he went home after the teachings and he took the sutra out. Let me show you the story here. I'll take this away. He was like, he's quite funny Sering. He's a monk from Copan. He said, I was so happy. I felt so inspired after the teaching. So I went home and I thought, I'm going to read this sutra, and it's so powerful for purification and, to get the imprints of emptiness on the mind, So he said, I got the sutra out and I started to recite it. And he said, then I got this headache. So he thought, I think I'll just put that away for now. So he folded up the sutra and he put it on the shelf, you know. He says, I'll do that later, you know. So then, you know, maybe a month or two, I don't know, later, Lama Zopa Rinpoche arrived at the house because, you know, we stayed at Rinpoche's house and Rinpoche would come periodically. So Rinpoche came and he shared this story with Sering. And Sering shared the story with Rinpoche. He said, you know, I got the teachings, I was feeling so inspired, and then I started to read it and I got a headache really quickly. And Rinpoche bent down to him and said, you're so lucky, that never happens to me, you know. Sering was just like blown away, you know. So what does that mean, you know? It means that, you know, obviously Sering has some karma with these sutras because he's already writing one in gold, and then he started to read another sutra on emptiness. So what Rinpoche meant is like, you're starting to purify right away by reading this sutra. So sometimes when you purify, you can experience, you know, some of the results in this life, but it's actually a really good sign because that means that you've purified some karma that may have resulted in like going in a lower realm and you just experience some sickness this life. So my example of that, one example for me was I felt in my own experience that when I took my monastic vows, which is, you know, what the main one is no killing, and there's another 35. But quite soon after, I remember I took the vow from Lama Zopa. I took the vow, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche was at the monastery at the time. I took from one of Rinpoche's gurus. And when we went up to see Rinpoche, there was a few of us who took the vows together. And Rinpoche said to me, oh, you're going to get sick this year. You know, and I was just like, oh, okay. I mean, I felt fine there. I never really, you know, and I hadn't really been sick a lot, so I didn't really take it on board. I was like, oh, I'll probably be fine. I hadn't had a lot of sickness this life so far, you know. But fair enough, a year later, not even a year later, I got really, really sick. And I was actually sick for quite some time. I had a lot of digestive problems for many, many years, you know. And that is an environmental result that you can experience in this realm of killing karma. So I kind of felt quite strongly that through the power of taking the vow of killing and being, you know, and all the other vows that I had to, you know, I was purifying some karma killing because even I took medicines and people gave me this and I had to experience it for some time. Now, I don't want to people off purification. I don't have them now. I mean, and we all have certain health things, but it was very curious to me that I just took the vow and within a few months, Rinpoche said I would be sick and then it was directly related to kill, you know, that main vow of killing karma. So that can happen when you start to purify. Sometimes stuff comes up, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, that's you experiencing the result of the purification, but just in this life, you know, so which is good in this realm. You don't want to experience it in another realm. So, as I say, in the class, we're going to go over in the practice day, we will touch base with some of these practices, particularly the Vajrasattva practice. But anything we do, you know, any sort of virtuous action, really, if we can apply any kind of mantra practice, meditation practice, anything done in relation to holy objects, also very powerful, making offerings, if we apply these 4 powers, it becomes very powerful for purifying. And just to sort of conclude why we need to purify, I mentioned this in the How to Meditate class, because why it's so important is because if we want to achieve any realization, any spiritual insight at all, what we need to do is purify, collect merit or virtue, make requests, and meditate. This is the kind of alchemy of spiritual transformation. So, and one of the main ones we need to do just to assure our good future rebirth, to assure that we don't go to unfavorable states, that we, you know, create the path for a good future rebirth, that ensure that any kind of karmas that are, even if we haven't created in this life, but in past lives, we don't want them to ripen at the death time. We want purification's like the biggest, like the sort of most important thing we need to think about if we want to sort of engage more in this path, you know, developing a sort of regular purification practice. So results of purification, we can, you know, and, you know, also when we purify, and this is another way we purify is just by listening to teachings. That's like one of the most powerful ways to purify, because by listening, it adjusts our mind, it adjusts our worldview, it adjusts how we think about things and adjust, hopefully correcting our actions of body, speech, and mind based on what we've heard in the teachings. So teachings, you know, listening to any kind of teach, very powerful for purification. So I think, yeah, this is, and also, you know, in a simple way, Rinpoche also had us put up in the center many mantras and holy objects. Just by looking at holy objects and mantras, just by seeing them, they can also have a powerful purification effect on the mind. So there's more complex and there's very simple ways of purifying as well that we'll go over a little bit more in the practice day. So any final questions or comments with that before we go into dedication? Because I realise we're a little bit over time, but I had to just squeeze in. Yes, Dana?
So I have one question. When you talked about the 4 opponent powers and all these other ways of purifying, do you have to do the 4 opponent powers in addition to these other ways of purifying?
Yeah, well,
Mantras?
ideally what you do is you do them alongside. So the practice of the 35 Buddha encompasses, inside that practice is the 4 opponent powers. They're actually in there. Inside the Vajrasattva practice, they're in there. So actually, in many ways, the best way to get familiar with the 4 opponent powers is through the Vajrasattva practice. Once you're familiar with them, you can apply those powers to the other practices like sutra recitation, like you know, reciting other types of mantras, you know, in practices, looking at you can apply them. But actually, that's why I wanted to do that practice on in the practice day, because that's really the way you start to understand how they work, is through that practice. And then when you've got a familiarity, you can apply them to any of those other practices.
Okay, thank you.
Terry?
Yeah, this question might actually be more for Bay, but on the required readings
Okay.
in the the wish fulfilling golden sun, the pages that are listed have nothing to do with karma. Those are that would be for module 2. It has to do with how to do meditation, posture, etc. And the pages for karma is actually 128 to 139.
Okay, well, that's good. Thank you for clarifying
Yeah. So I'm like, we've already did this.
Yeah. That's good to know. Yeah. Everybody else has got that now then. That's good for those who are doing the reading. So anyway, I wanted to thank some of you. Any other quick questions or comments? And again, I think during the practice day, if those of you come, there'll be a time for question and answer and just digestion a little bit, because I know there's a lot in this module. There's a lot of nuts and bolts type things. But I do, as I say, I do feel like, how many of us have been doing the Lamrim, you know, 365-day Lamrim? Dana, looking at hands here. Let me just get the gallery view. Terry, Jeanette, good. And are we fine? Yeah, great. Julian's doing as well. It's I mean, it's quite clear, isn't it? You think it's helpful? Yeah, good. So again, it's just kind of going over that, and it just kind of brings it in, you know, we keep more reading that, just bring that. And also the suggested reading's not too extensive this time. So if you can touch into that, that's also really helpful. But if you're just happy to come and listen, great as well. You know, every time we listen, it's creating imprints and seeds. Okay, Jeanette, thank you for letting me know you're going to miss the next module. I see that in the chat. Yeah, because you're going to be traveling. Okay. Well, safe travels. Does anyone else have another question? So anyway, hopefully we'll see some of you if you can make it for the practice day on January 5th. And otherwise, yeah, thanks for joining. And you can also get in touch with me anytime. Bay has my contact details. So if you do have any sort of more personal questions on karma or just generally that you don't want to ask in the class, we haven't had a chance. There's not really time this time to do a discussion group. We did that the last time, but Bay said there might be a chance after the next module. So there will still be discussion groups in the future. It's just because it's Christmas time and then we kind of finish and go into the next module after New Year. So I hope you all have a very merry, meaningful Christmas. And I'm just going to share share the dedication prayers now so we can dedicate. So we always dedicate. Let's just taking a moment just to absorb, just allow ourselves to absorb what we heard this evening. Something particular that we heard that catches us and then maybe we can take away with us and practice and contemplate more in the coming days, coming weeks, over the festive period. Most important thing, I think one of the most important services we can do for others is just having good ethical conduct. You know, as His Holiness always teaches, that much more we show the example in not harming others and helping where we can, that much more we just benefit. Even if it's just in small ways, you know, it's really not that small, you know. Our actions, our body, speech and mind can have so much benefit in the world just through simple practices of good ethical conduct. Keeping vows, trying not to harm others as much as we can with our body, speech and mind brings so much peace and happiness in the world. And on that basis, then we can start to develop these noble qualities such as bodhicitta, wisdom realizing emptiness, and really become like, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche would say, the sun shining in the world. So on this ground of morality, then these beautiful qualities of bodhicitta and emptiness can really ripen. So we just dedicate that for ourselves and all beings, as vast as space, to develop, to be able to really, on the basis of practicing pure morality, develop bodhicitta, realize emptiness. How wonderful it would be, however. Wonderful it would be if always, we were all able to realize nature and mind, liberate ourselves of karma and delusion, and then develop these credible minds of bodhicittas. We can see in the examples of great saints, holy beings, who have come in the past, who are here in the present, and who will still continue to come in the future. Ojanju sencho rinpoche, mage panange gyurshik, yeba nyamba meba ye gonne gondu pelvar shok. May the precious supreme bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. And for His Holiness's long life, incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And we'll also dedicate for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's swift return. So on the last line here, instead of please, please live long, we say please, please return quickly. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serves the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving and spreading Manjunat's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three rare sublime ones, Saviour, myself and others, your disciples, please, please return quickly. And again, for those of you interested, I'll probably in about the next week, I'll have the assessment ready and you need to do it on Christmas Day. No rest for the wicked, eh? I'm joking. You can have it in by early January. You'll have a good week or so to do it. And it's always open book anyway. It's just really just creating more seeds, you know, for us to deepen our understanding. And, you know, that's all really, you know. So if you're interested to try out the assessment, you're more than welcome. I'm happy to take a look. It's not too difficult, and as I say, it's all open book. So it's just, you know, clarifying it just gives you an opportunity to clarify your knowledge a little bit more, you know. I find out if you do tests, you just remember it a bit more for a bit longer, you know. I think that's what it does. So again, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see some of you over the after January. Yeah, so Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you, Venerable Angie.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Venerable.
Thanks.
Happy holidays.
Thank you,
Happy
babe.
Thank
holidays.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.